How's it going, guys? Welcome to NedFest. In this video, we are going to be taking a closer look at why people reject Christianity from a social standpoint. Now, there are more areas that can turn people away from faith, such as science, theology, etc. But for this video, we're going to stay focused on the social issues with Christianity. And we're going to try to do so in the most objective, non-churchy way possible. Also, remember that I do not claim to be an absolute source of truth, nor do I think I have all the answers. I'm just simply here to give some of my own personal thoughts, opinions, and observations. Now, without further hoopla, let's get into the video. The first thing I want to talk about is how sometimes people believe what they want to believe. We tend to gravitate towards beliefs we find attractive, even if they're not the most reasonable beliefs. And one belief that many people do not find attractive is the belief that there's an all-powerful God up there who wants us to live our lives a certain way. Just hit the blinds. I mean, it's hard to blame somebody for not wanting to embrace a faith that essentially tells them that the way they're living their life sucks and needs to change. Here's a non-faith related example to help you understand what I mean. Kids love believing in Santa Claus. Now, when I was just a wee tot, my belief in Santa is what buttered my croissant. But when I got just like a little bit older, all my friends started figuring out that Santa was just a myth. Yet, despite all the evidence, I continue to believe in Santa just because I wanted to. The thought of an overweight, elderly gentleman in PJs was just too appealing of an idea for me to let go of. So, I keep hitting the freaking line. So, I, like many other kids, continued to believe in Santa, not because it made sense, because the idea of Santa Claus was just attractive to me. Okay, a slightly less sucky example I can think of is how people allow themselves to get stuck in broken relationships. I mean, we've all been there. You've been dating somebody for a while, you've maybe had some good times with them, maybe you like the way they play with your hair when they kiss you. I don't know many girls that do this when they kiss somebody, but if that's your girlfriend, I'm kind of jealous. Anyway, despite the fact that the relationship may have seemed to be good for a while, in the back of your mind, you know it's broken and that it's hurting you on the inside. Broken relationships can rob you of your confidence, your morality, your joy, and can even compromise who you are. So, why do we allow ourselves to become trapped in these relationships? It's because we get inside of our own heads and convince ourselves that this person is the best fit for us, that they're the love of our lives, that they complete us. Also, we're usually a bit horny. But if you removed all emotional attachment from these situations, you'd be able to leave the other person behind in a heartbeat, because all logic and reason is screaming at you that you're much better off without this person. I just realized I've been chewing gum this whole time. Yet we don't leave them behind, because the idea that somehow the relationship is going to miraculously work out and you're going to end up with that person happily ever after it's so attractive of an idea that becomes the idea that we choose to believe. So just like a child rejects the idea of Santa's non-existence, again, sorry, I know that example was trash, or a girl dislikes the idea of leaving her boyfriend, many people dislike the idea of a God and therefore reject it. And it's not only non-believers who do this. I mean, Christians do this all the freaking time. For example, the way I see it, the Bible gives us 3 big rules on sexual morality before marriage. 1, don't have sex before marriage, duh. 2, don't think about having sex before marriage. And then 3, treat others with the utmost purity. Many people, including myself, tend to bend and mold this 3rd rule to our own satisfaction because we tend to have a hard time keeping it in our pants. Now, again, logic and reason are saying that this verse is implying that anything in pursuit of sexual satisfaction is wrong and needs to be avoided. Yet, here I am convincing myself that because the verse is a little bit ambiguous, I have God's permission to go further. Obviously, this is stupid and just another example of how people tend to believe what they want based off whatever makes them happiest. Anyways, after many conversations with a couple of my atheist friends, I've learned that the main reason why people don't like the idea of there being a God is because they don't like the idea that there's this all-powerful ruler who judges those who don't live by his own rule book. And like I said earlier, man, like it's hard to fault this viewpoint. I know I wouldn't want to follow somebody who I perceive to be so harsh and unforgiving. But the problem here isn't that non-believers are stupid or just have foolish views of the universe. The problem is that they have a very skewed perception of who God is. And here's where I'm going to transition into the second thing. And here's where I'm going to transition into the next reason why I believe people reject Christianity from a social standpoint. And that's that there are so many people who have misconceptions of God and who he is. And the sad thing is that it's mainly believers who are to blame for this. Some of us tend to give non-believers a piss-poor view of God by isolating them from our friend groups, changing the way we act around them, judging the decisions they make. Now, I know we're not all guilty of this, but I mean, still, imagine what it's like to be outside of a group of people who came off as so judgy and sometimes even clicky. You see what I did there? I just zoomed out like way too much on that. But no part of you would want to be involved with that group is what I'm trying to get at. And not only that, but you would probably reasonably associate the haughtiness of those people with the God that they follow. I mean, if the people are judgy, then it's only logical to assume that the God they follow must also be judgy, since those people are trying so hard to be like their God. Now, I know I'm being pretty harsh towards believers here, but like I said before, not all believers are guilty of this. And I'm simply just trying to communicate the viewpoints of the several atheists who I have talked to. Anyway, I think one thing that many believe. Anyways, I think one thing that many Christians. Holy, I cannot get the sentence right. Anyways, I think that one thing many Christians, including myself, tend to forget is that the first step in delivering the gospel to somebody is communicating God's love and grace through Jesus Christ. Once this is done and that person has accepted Jesus and his gift to us, then we can move on to step 2 and start holding each other accountable for our actions. I've seen and heard of way too many self-righteous Christians just skipping step 1 and just judging the crap out of non-believers right out of the gates. Y'all, what I'm getting at here is that Christians are not supposed to hold non-Christians to a Christian standard. It doesn't make sense. The Bible's pretty straight up about this too. You can't expect someone who isn't on your team to score goals for your team. You have to get them on your team first. And I can assure you that the best way to keep somebody from getting on your team is to just criticize the way they play the game. Here's another way to look at it. It would be stupid for you to disapprove of someone outside of your company for not doing work for your boss. You first need to get them employed by your company before you can start expecting them to do work for your boss. God wants nothing more than to just have a relationship with us. Obedience and a sin-free life are not his top priorities. And it sucks that so many people think that that's what the case is, because it's not. Having a relationship with Christ is what comes first. And then, fueled by your love for Jesus and your relationship with him, not by fear or obligation, you start to transform your life into a life that's more honoring to him. All right, I know I'm being a little too preachy. Another misconception that a lot of people have about God is that he demands that we all be perfect. And if you're not this Billy Graham caliber individual, then you're just not worthy of salvation. And this brings me to my third and final reason why I believe people reject Christianity from a social standpoint, and that's people sometimes feel like they're too dirty of a person or that they're just unworthy of being a Christian. I've had way too many of my friends tell me that they don't want to come to church with me because they just don't really think they're good enough to be there. It's funny because the people who are broken and feel like they're drowning in guilt are the ones that God especially wants to come to him. See? We've got like 47 hymns about this too. Anyway, let's focus on why certain people might feel this way. I think the main reason is that we forget that God is a just God. He's very well aware of the personalities and strengths and weaknesses he's given each and every one of us. Like, if you're a D1 Christian and you were born and raised in the Bible Belt and your parents were still together and you went to church all the time as a kid, then you've been given one heck of a blessed life, and it's God's hope that you take full advantage of that. He gave you a lot to work with, and he expects you to use it. On the contrary, if you grew up in a broken household, maybe one or both of your parents were missing from your childhood, you were raised in a community primarily absent of believers, then God's aware that you have it pretty rough, and he offers grace in that. Now, chill. I'm not saying that if your parents are divorced, then you have the right to murder, steal, and fornicate. I mean, don't get me wrong. God equally expects all of us to have faith and to pursue a Christ-like life. to the best of our ability. He understands that we each have our own skill sets and weaknesses, and that our best abilities are very different from one another. But he provides grace in that. Think of it this way. God isn't silly enough to give one man a perfect runner's body and another man freaking polio and then expect that they both run a mile in under 5 minutes. He expects them both to try and to lean on him to complete the mile, but he also knows it's going to be a much harder mile for the guy with polio. We are judged by the effort and the heart we put into the race and not by the time in which we finish it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this video. I know I wasn't able to cover all the social issues with Christianity, but I do hope that I was able to give some of you guys a new perspective on the issues I did cover. If you did like this video and want to see more like it, then be sure to show the channel support by leaving a like and subscribing. Obviously, this channel is brand spanking new, so it's a little hard for me to reach an audience beyond my 24 followers on Instagram. So any and all support is much appreciated. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.